Unbelievable! Are you looking for a no-nonsense property and business podcast? Our mission is to provide jam-packed content straight to your ears, where we can add value and unpick the fluff in the industry. If this sounds like a bit of you, then strap in and hold tight for an episode with Heidi and Dan.
So welcome to another week's episode of Unbelievable Property Podcast. I'm really excited by the guest that we've got on today, Mark Stokes. So without going into too much detail, because Mark's going to give us some insight into his experience, but Mark has over 30 years at C-suite level in international business, an experienced property developer, business leader, and had lots of experience in mergers and acquisitions. So thank you very much for joining us on the podcast tonight, Mark.
That's my absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on what I have to say is an excellent podcast. So all credit to you.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much. So, I just gave a brief synopsis of your, let's say, your experience or extensive experience. Do you mind just taking us back to a point when you feel is relevant to sort of give us an overview into who Mark Stokes is?
I suppose if I took you back to 2014, that was in fact, it was July 2014. That was the decision I made to leave corporate life. So I'm starting with the end of one era and the start of another. I spent nigh on 25 years, a loyal corporate employee, had a lot of responsibility. But the time I took to contemplate life moving forward, I had 4 children. I was running 7 different companies. I was making millions and millions of pounds for my employers. I was cog in somebody else's wheel. I might have been a chairman, a chief exec, a managing director, but I decided that there was going to be an 8th and a 9th company if I stayed where I was, but that each and every one of those companies would take me away from my children. So at that point, I decided, right, I will leave this company. And something switched, a trigger switched in my mind. And it is a mindset thing that from that moment on, the company was paying for my exit strategy. I hadn't positioned my exit yet. I hadn't told my employers. And in fact, when I did sit down with my chief exec, it was to be another 12 months before I actually did leave. I was asked to finish off some mergers, some acquisitions, some integration. So, I guess that tells you a little bit about me in terms of I spent 25 years giving some of the best years of my life to my employer. I've worked in 33 countries, probably run $1.5 billion of infrastructure around those countries. But I had the grit and courage to say, right, okay, enough's enough. I'll leave on my own terms to build a multi-generational legacy, which is what I've been doing for the last 9 years.
Wow.
That's amazing. Did you have a plan? Did you just want to leave, or did you have a plan to go on to something else, or what was that transition like?
So it's an interesting question, really. So I probably did jump out the company jet and design my parachute on the way down. I had 12 months exit strategy to work that through. The drivers for me were very clear that I wanted to build that multi-generational legacy for my kids, create something that I was incredibly proud of, that the children could relate to. And I knew that wasn't going to be in corporate life. So I was on very extended gardening leave. So that would take me about 6 months. I actually stayed for a year, all the time gathering useful skills. And I think what many people maybe make the mistake of when they leave corporate life is to, they throw the baby out the bathwater. They're so pleased to get out and join that entrepreneurial crusade. That they actually forget that they've spent 5, 10, 20, 30 years nurturing and curating a fantastic array of skills. Actually, what we need to be doing is recognizing the skills we've got and repurposing those to really drive forward with clarity our vision, mission, values, and purpose as entrepreneurs.
I think that's a really sort of relevant point there that you make about utilising the skills that you've made or not made, but generated and developed throughout their careers to be able to, like you say, transfer that into different sectors, different markets, different approaches to what it is you want to achieve. And, I sort of resonate with that. I went full time in property for a period of time. The business that I was running and scaling at the time, turns out I didn't enjoy it. So I decided to exit that business and then go back to work. I mean, my background sales, and I really enjoy that. I don't mind being back at work because I realised that I enjoy what I'm doing now and I didn't enjoy so much what I was doing then. And I think it takes, like you say, a lot of courage to, like you say, jump out that corporate plane and open your parachute up on the way down, but not to slander the job that you've been in that has given all of the skills and the development and the career progression that you've had, but be thankful and gracious for what you've experienced and what you've had to be able to do what you're doing now. And I mean, that was a very long-winded point about it to lead to this question, but what sort of skill set do you feel that you've developed over the last 25, 30 years in the corporate world to be able to transfer into what you are doing today?
So I'm not a self-made person. I've stood on the shoulders of giants for much of my corporate career. I'm a leader of teams. And as a leader of teams, I feel one of my core strengths is identifying great talent, breathing oxygen into that talent, giving that talent the headroom to create in their own way and form their own leadership personality, give them opportunity. And there's nothing more rewarding as a leader to see your team as individuals and as a collective grow to incredible heights. And I continue to do that. I mean, the work in mergers and acquisitions, some of the key attributes I always look for when I invest in a company, when I back individuals, when I become a shareholder alongside other people, I'm looking for that talent, that sizzle in the sauce there that really does set them apart. That could be grit, it could be determination, it could be creativity, but talent identification and then enabling that talent to succeed. Absolutely key for me. I've run teams at board level, C-suite level, and there simply is nothing more rewarding. And I think some of the alternatives that I've seen out there, probably some would say the old civil service public sector mentality, where if somebody can do my job, they become a personal threat. And could actually take over my position. I actually embraced that, and I always wanted to make myself redundant from my role. If I can find people who can grow into my shoes, I can train them, nurture, curate their skills, they can do what I can, then I can go off and do the next thing in the business. And I've always been that visionary and pathfinder in the organisations that I've been involved in, having that absolute confidence, yet with a little bit of intrepidation. I wouldn't say it ever goes close to arrogance, but having that confidence in my own ability to bring people on board and there will be another role. And I've only had 2 employers in my 25 years of corporate career, but probably had 60 different roles. And your team will walk 1,000 miles over broken glass for you when there's no glass ceiling for them.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, no, certainly, and I think that's something that you probably, well, not necessarily you, but a lot of people will probably see. And going into industry, whether it's in the corporate world or depending on what job there are, people hiring others. Sometimes they may take the view that I don't want them to be really ambitious and driven because they may shine a light on me or be better than me, and then that will stop them hiring that person. Which, in effect, you're sort of putting yourself as a disadvantage because there's probably lots you can learn from that person to then support your growth onto the next stage. But at the same time, you're actually taking away an opportunity for an individual as well who it might be the perfect fit for them. And like you say, and then you've got on the flip side, other leaders want people to surpass them and say, I helped you through this part of your journey. I can't do any more for you. On you go. Like, let's move on. And I think in order for businesses to thrive, and I'm not speaking from a wealth of experience like you, Mark, but I think a lot more people have loyalty to an organisation, but as well as there'll be a higher productivity output if that's the case. Do you agree?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think there's something that resides in every individual that is incredibly special, and sometimes organisations don't have the ability to draw that out of them. And I've found that personal mentoring my key team, giving them opportunity, allowing them the ability to fail in small doses. My first employer was a joint venture, actually. A gentleman who pulled me out of Polytechnic. I am that old. I did my degree in construction management, and David McCourt employed me as the first employee in Europe for his new telecoms venture in power stations, data centers, fiber networks. Real telecommunications visionary. And he saw something in me, but that American culture, quite frankly, chucks you in at the deep end with no life raft, and it is sink or swim. And I took the approach that I would always step forward. I was always volunteer. It doesn't matter how crappy the job was. I'd always put my hand up and volunteer, because each opportunity was a chance to learn new skills. And that's where I became our corporate troubleshooter. And literally any god-awful situation that happened around the UK, then Europe, and then turned out to be around the globe, I would get that call from the chairman to say, Mark, could you just, and that could be anything from, your tickets are waiting at Heathrow, get yourself down there in 4 hours flat, and go halfway around the world, or, resolving some conflict or audit position or whatever it is. And you have to be very tenacious, light on your feet, agility. All these words spring to mind, but you have to live by your wits, and listen very carefully. Measure people's emotions, listen. It draws all kind of skills. Hopefully that makes sense to you.
Yeah, definitely. And there's sort of two questions that I'd like to ask on that. Firstly is, it sounds very demanding. Like, how did that impact your, let's say, your home life on a day-to-day basis? And I'm assuming that lifestyle would have been probably a contributing factor for you to say in 2014, right, I need a new exit, I need a new challenge, I want to do something else. And the other question, I can't remember the other question, so we'll just stick with that one for now. Let's go.
Yeah, look, I thrive. I suppose one of the skills is working out your own identity, working out what your orientation is, what you're good at. I like variety. I like change. I like solving problems. Whether I've created them or our team have, or ultimately have been my responsibility, or it's somebody else's team, but being parachuted into some corporate war zone somewhere around the world, I found incredibly rewarding. What it did mean for me was that I had to run a very systemized organization, because leader leaving a business within 4 hours and heading off might be a day, might be a week, might be a month. So that's why, I guess that's probably why I was given the role, because I had the ability to have a very structured business. I put faith, nurtured the talent within my business so that they could do my role. They had clear systems, processes. We were dealing with tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions. So nothing could be left to chance. So, adopting great leverage, great people, giving them opportunity. They were some of the key factors for me. In terms of what effect it had at home, well, I remember getting a call to get myself over to Heathrow, pick up some tickets and go and sort out a big issue in Australia in the late 90s. I came back 2 weeks later with an appraisal of the situation, gave my appraisal to the board. The board said, that sounds absolutely great. Could you fly back and go and sort it out? So I'd only been married 3 months. So I went home, had a chat with my wife, and we decided, okay.
Fantastic honeymoon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic
So we went
honeymoon, yeah.
Yeah, we're out there for the millennium for just over a year.
Wow.
And Yeah. So yeah, it creates lots of opportunities, but I think maybe one of the areas I was probably not quite as well equipped to deal with was family life when it arose. I don't think if there is a great book on parenting, I'm not sure I read it. And I
No,
had to
same,
find my
don't
way.
worry.
If you find one, let me know.
Yeah. Now I've got 4 children, and probably the two eldest. I probably wasn't the most present father. I'd be up at 5 a.m. I'd be working late. Laptop would come out. We'd be having Sunday lunch, and maybe I wasn't present in the moment. I was thinking about the board meeting or management meetings on Monday morning. Probably a scene repeated up and down the country, but it personally had an effect. And I think this is where, I've now been married for 26 years in a few weeks' time. And sometimes it takes
Congratulations.
somebody else. Thank you. Sometimes it takes somebody else to just flag these up. And Sharon and I have really frank conversations, hold each other to account. And she said, well, look, how many more companies do you want to run? Because the more there are, the less time you'll spend with the kids. And I think there were key decisions like that created big changes in my life for the better. So, one of the biggest strengths I think there is in business is humility. The opposite to humility is arrogance. It plays no part in business. And if you've got that humble approach, then you will adopt leverage. You will bring in great teams. You will want the best for your team. So yeah, remain humble, stay agile, tenacious. That has shaped my career.
That's some brilliant insight.
It is. You sound so organised in terms of your systems and your processes and your leverage. How did you actually prepare in that 12 months to leave? And what was the next step for you after that? What did it look like?
Yeah, that 12 months took quite a toll on me, to be honest. I wasn't coasting. We'd just acquired a substantial business. I was non-exec director of 5 or 6 organisations. We were doing restructuring. And anybody who understands restructuring knows what that means. It means getting rid of quite a lot of people. And I've always wanted to do things on my own terms. I would never allow somebody to be made redundant by receiving a letter on the kitchen table informing them of that. So, my style would be to hire out a conference centre, and we had best part of 250 people in the room, and it's the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever done. But I took to the stage, told people exactly what was happening, why. This was the process. Throw stones at me, insults at me, love me, hate me, but I'm just going to tell you exactly how it is. There will be a process. And I've just felt that was the best way. That, a lot of these people I'd become friends with, I'd employed them, I'd given them opportunity, and it was my responsibility to show them that, how to treat other people, because they would become leaders in business in the future. So hopefully I allowed them to continue their careers, maybe internally or with other organisations. So I was pretty drained. Answering your question, Heidi, I was pretty drained after that 12 months. I probably worked more hours, I'd be 70, 80 hours a week. I was handsomely remunerated for it, don't get me wrong. It's not a pity party, but, those sort of decisions take their toll and leave a mark. And I've had a few of those over my years. So I probably was pretty burnt out, to be honest, by the time I got to the end of that period. However, a few weeks, dust yourself down, look yourself in the mirror, right? Let's look at the kids while they're sleeping and think, right, okay, this is where it really starts. This is where the rubber meets the road. Let's get some traction, build a plan, build the team, work out what I really want to do, what lights my fire, and go and create some shared value out there.
Amazing. So what lit your fire then? What was that step?
That didn't become clear for quite some time, if I'm honest. I think the process of kind of sitting down with a sheet of A3 paper and start doodling, and it all comes together in an afternoon. It's a bit of a fallacy to me. To me, it took a while, and I went with a number of things. I mean, one thing I wanted to do was take control of my personal economy. That was number one. I'd been an employee, a well-paid employee, but I'd been an employee for a quarter of a century. My pension, I was 44 when I left corporate life. My pension was one of the biggest bank accounts I've got, but it was managed by somebody else. So, that was a good example. The pension, I decided, right, I'm 44, I want to control my pension. Now, I know I can't do that. Way back then, it was, retirement 65. There was no 25% drawdown at 55. So I was years, a couple of decades away from being able to touch my pension. But I thought, well, look, I'm just going to make that commitment to me and my family, and I'll find a way. Sometimes the obstacle is the way. So I set myself pretty meaty challenges. And in that case, I worked out that there was another way. I could actually create a trust and put my pension into trust, and then I could become the trustee of my own investment fund at the age of mid-40s. And I was so inspired by that and what it could achieve, and so fraught that over 25 years of an IFA in a shiny suit and pointy shoes telling me everything that they could create fees on, and never did they ever mention a small self-administered pension scheme. So I decided, well, I've got a 35-year itch I want to scratch here. I've always loved the smell of a brand new book. I've always been an avid reader since, my mum just really encouraged me to read as a young boy. But I guess corporate life just knocked the soul out of me in some respects. So having left corporate life, I now had a channel, to write books like Commercial Conversions, which I've been doing for 30 years, like SSAS pensions. And so I have to experience something to know what I enjoy, what I don't enjoy. And it might sound a little bit trial by error, but, I'm commitment. I go full immersion, and you just never know what opportunities come from it. Who would have thought of those opportunities, really? So, that's probably not the answer you was expecting. So I not only continued to design my parachute on the way down, but I continued to design my life as I hit the ground and continued to roll, and I've been rolling ever since. And the analogy is quite clear. I used to be a free fall skydiver in my 20s. My passion was skydiving out of helicopters. So, I always like
That's
to
a crazy
take
passion, by the way.
Yeah.
I think it's a fantastic analogy, because the sentiment behind it is essentially like you're in this free fall, and it's essentially time bound, and you have to do something in that period of time in order to save your life, don't you? So them decisions you make essentially as you're on your way down, opening the parachute, gives you that sort of focus in order to be able to drive what it is you want to do next. And it's a fantastic analogy, and I appreciate your honesty as well, because like you said, you didn't know straight away exactly what it was you wanted to do. You didn't get the A3 piece of paper down and the next day say, right, okay, starting up a SSAS, this is fantastic. It took a lot of due diligence and research to be able to put pen to paper and actually understand what it is you wanted to do next. And you used the word earlier, legacy, as well, to be able to create that long-lasting legacy for your family. And it had to meet with your core values and your ethics and beliefs. So you didn't just jump into the next, best thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And going back to the skydiving analogy, look, there is no room for procrastination, and there is no room for stargazing either. When you drop below 3,000 feet or above 3,000 feet, the ground feels miles away. You drop below 2,500, 3,000 feet, that ground comes at you awfully fast. So, making decisions in the moment, not just reflecting on certain things. You've got to look at the bigger picture. So taking action quickly, Yeah, so I like this extreme part, really pushing the envelope, whether that be, skydiving out of helicopters, or I'm an advanced paddy diver. If I'm
Oh,
going to
same.
run a 5K run, I actually ended up running across the Sahara Desert and running, 100-mile races in a day, and just really pushing the boundaries. And it's absolutely incredible. The body can't take you that far, but the combination of the mind and the body, that positive mindset, when you've been running for 18 hours solid and your body just wants to crawl up under a hedge and go to sleep, but something in you, that commitment, drives you on. And it's whether it's the same in business, physical experience, and even mental anxiety and mental challenges that some people go through. You can get through anything. Just break the problem down, keep moving. Walk, crawl if you have to, but you'll get through the problems and see the daylight out the other end.
I love that. I'm crawling at the minute on a few things, and I'm just dragging myself through it.
You're still moving.
I'm still moving very slowly and quickly. It's terrifying. But just to bring you back to your SAS pension then, some people may or may not know what a SAS is. Are you okay to explain it? And then did you actually use your SAS to invest, or what did that look like?
Yeah. So I'm not a qualified IFA. I have no qualifications, just an honest guy who just wrote about his experiences, which hopefully leaves a mark on the world. So a SAS pension is a trust. It's a small self-administered scheme, often referred to as a director's pension. And it's a trust. You can have between 1 and 11 trustees. And to be a trustee, you have to be over the age of 18. There are a very small qualifying criteria. You need a company that maybe has got a payroll or 1 year's accounts, something like that. You can transfer existing pensions into the trust, although you don't have to. And then it's your responsibility. The money will sit in a bank account, and it's your responsibility to deploy those funds, to invest those funds. Now, there are a huge array of investment opportunities there. You can invest in commercial property. You can do everything a SIP can in terms of stocks, shares, ETFs, trackers. So there is so many things. You could buy gold bullion. So a huge array. There are some rules, of course. You can make loans. You can receive loans. You can create leverage. And what we've done, we invested in a business through our pension, which made a handsome return. We also acquired 5 commercial properties. That also created value outside the pension with some residential property. So there is a huge amount of flexibility on what you do. It can be as hands-off or as hands-on as you like. I decided that I was fed up of my pension management strategy being receiving a pension statement once a year, thinking that looks a bit poor. Hopefully it'll be better next year. So I wanted to be really hands on the levers, really defining the future and not outsourcing my largest bank account to somebody else who would, strip me bare through fees and things like that, some of which are declared and some of which are not. So I had an abject distrust of an industry that had apparently served me for 25 years. And for 24 years, the pension that I had, and I pulled into a SAS, we doubled it in 24 months under our own management.
Wow.
Nice. That's amazing.
Yeah, it gives you that control, doesn't it? I think when your pension, firstly, if in employment, I mean, you get to choose what pension, but they tend to have their pension scheme that they have, which is usually a legal and general. Depending on your age, it obviously has dependent on what shares and bonds and equities, etc. you have. So that changes due to risk and age. I actually took mine out and put mine in a SIP. I did set up was looking to set up a SAS a while ago, but I think I explained to you previously, Mark, that it didn't go well. There was a few things that we were missold in the lead up to that. So, I just want to, you have set up a SaaS, and you do have a book called The Property and SaaS Secrets that one lucky listener will be able to get their hands on. And I'm going to plug it forward to say that if there is anyone interested out there in learning a bit about SaaS, it's in that book, isn't it? And they can go and have a read for that, and just to get a bit of a broader understanding on how they can use that as an investment vehicle to grow their wealth pretty much over time and take control of their future.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't sell you anything on a SaaS. I can't set one up. Don't want to be an IFA. Don't want to be a corporate trustee. So there are lots of genuine experiences that I've had that I share freely in. I've written 3 books on SaaS. They're all on Amazon. Very happy to give a copy of there you go, Property and SaaS Secrets there to one of your lucky winners. But look, a SaaS isn't right for everybody. It gave me a freedom to express myself in my investments. I also wanted to create the resonance with the future generation on what a pension and long-term planning looks like. And at the age that I was, I was probably 44, 45 when I was looking into this. Got a SaaS in 2015, 2016. So my children would be anywhere between 6 and 15. It's very difficult for a teenager to reflect on what life might look like in 10 years, 20 years. I mean, that's twice as long as I've been on this planet, let alone look at 40, 50, 60. And what we did, we acquired property in our SaaS, and I can now take my children to have a cup of tea, coffee, hot chocolate, probably with all the cream and sprinkles on you can load on the top, in a cafe which is owned by our pension. So it brings a pension into glorious technicolor. They can relate to it. Oh, this is what a pension looks like. I can touch it. I can feel it. And I've always wanted, I wrote a book called Advice to Your Younger Self. I've always wanted to give the next generation a hand up, get them to shortcut processes. Yes, learn from experience, but learn from the experiences of others, not just the experiences and school of hard knocks they might go through. And I think the ability for a child to have a wonderful, loving upbringing, but as they approach adulthood, to actually aspire to a longer-term vision, have a longer-term plan, and look what life might look like in their 30s or 40s, is a gift that shouldn't be denied to any youngster.
Definitely, and I think that resonates a lot with me. I've got 2 young girls, and I got into property and property investing, property insourcing, did a commercial to resi conversion because, like you say, it's that legacy piece. I didn't have what they have now. Growing up, I had no financial education. I had no financial literacy training. I had no one sit down and talk about tax and investments and how you can make your money grow. It was a very hand-to-mouth situation. So my money mindset was, that there wasn't enough. It is a scarcity mindset. The money comes in, you spend it, it goes out. There was no ways of, them people are rich because mummy and daddy are rich, but they probably got the financial education and a lot of them are wealthy because of the values and the training and the mindset they probably have because they've seen it happen. And that's what I'm going to be able to pass down to my kids. And I wrote down the name of your book, Advice to Your Younger Self, because I'd like to read that. And actually, I think that what I know now, I wish I knew when I was 15, 16. But again, you're in a different sort of mindset then. Your priorities are different, I guess. But no, that's fantastic. I'm definitely going to have a read of that book.
Yeah, and it was a great way for me to kind of pay forward. I didn't feel equipped to write a whole book on that subject. I have a lot of experience, but look, there's so much that this world has to offer. So I reached out to 50 other people who I knew, like, and trusted over many years. And I actually reached out to 55 people and asked them if they would like to write a chapter in the book on their experiences. Given where you are now, if you were to take yourself back to your teenage years, what advice do you wish you would have been given? And out of those 55, 50 accepted. And even the journey of those chapter authors, I mean, some of them said, look, I've never told anybody this, Mark, but, maybe I've dyslexia or something else that they've had challenges in life with, and didn't think they could write a chapter. But, if I've mentored people since, for probably about 27, 28 years now. So to be able to support them and for them to celebrate themselves as being a chapter author, there are accomplishments within accomplishments here. And look, the rising tide lifts all ships, doesn't it? And I think everybody had a fantastic opportunity there, seized it, grasped it. All the proceeds go to a great cause. I really believe in creating that shared value in community. It's the law of reciprocity.
Love that. Amazing.
Definitely. And I'm going to pick up on the creating shared value, because looking through the website, so I went on to I believe it's Sustainacon, is that correct? So creating a sustainable economy, that's one of your businesses, and you've got other businesses, Equaacademy. So just wondering if you could give a bit of an overview on them and what you're currently working on and what you're doing now. But you said it a couple of times, and I saw it in bold on the website, creating shared value. Can you tell us why that?
Yeah, I believe that businesses become truly sustainable when they don't just look at their bottom line and shareholder value, but they give back to the community. I'll give you some examples of that. I run a mentoring business, so that's a great way for me to use my experience to identify great talent, work with individuals to achieve amazing things. I ran an energy services company for my employer. I co-founded it back in 2006. And what we did there, we did a lot of engineering contracts. And a very large hospital in London, Royal Free Hospital, had a problem with its boiler house. So this creates the combined heat and power, steam for sterilisation of the medical equipment, all the boilers. So it generates all the heat and power for the hospital.
Yeah.
We did a full energy refresh there. It was fully financed, and we sold power and heat to the hospital for 25 years. So it was a very innovative contract at the time. But the equipment was so efficient that we were generating too much heat, and the heat was going up the chimney. So what we did there was we created this beautiful scheme, and I think it's one of the most amazing engineering schemes that I've done. Not the largest by a long shot, but surrounding Royal Free Hospital are 5 tower blocks, and each tower block have people who are classified as in fuel poverty, which means they've got in excess of 20% of their disposable income being spent on utilities. And this is going back 15 years, so that it's probably a lot higher classification now. And what we did, we used the heat, the excess heat, to create a district heating scheme, put hot water through pipes, created a 5 or 6 kilometre network that linked all of these tower blocks, created free heat to the tower blocks. And there you have you've got this circular economy where the hospital has now become the hub of the community. It is creating powerful heat to take people out of fuel poverty. The net return there is you have a healthier nation, and therefore you don't have people crossing back over the threshold of the hospital, burdening the NHS. So you've got this wonderful circular economy there. So there's a couple of examples where you can make great profits, you can make a great return yourself, and by doing that you're helping others. You're not making profit at the expense of somebody, you're making profits while helping others stand on their own 2 feet, and that economy snowballs. So there's a few examples, and yeah, I've mentored people personally. My investment business is called Sustainomics, which is short for sustainable economics. I believe you have to have sustainable economics to continue to do the great work. So we work in all areas, got interests in working with the homeless, increasing the national standards across everything we do in terms of infrastructure. So that's my investment vehicle. We invest in businesses, we invest in property, and we invest in people.
Oh, I love that. That is cool. Where are you based, Mark, out of interest?
So I'm based in the Surrey Hills, down near Guildford. So that's my
Nice.
location. We've been there for probably about 20 years. 4 kids and a dog. I'm afraid I can't say I've got a Lamborghini on the driveway because I simply can't fit a dog and 4 kids in a Lamborghini. So not my style.
I've got a transporter. I feel your pain. I was like, I'm getting a bus. And then I can get a bigger dog.
Yeah.
That's
So
because you've worked everywhere over the world. It was hard to pinpoint where you was, and I was like, I'm just going to ask him.
yeah,
I felt like that was teeing up to I host PP in Humberside. Would you like to come and do a speak on the circuit, Mark? That's where I thought that was leading to.
I'm adequate enough for him to come.
There we go.
But I do, if you wanted to come, that'd be
I know Hull very, very well. My father was an engineer. I came from very humble roots from Boston in Lincolnshire. I remember. I remember going up seeing the opening with my father of the Humber Bridge when that opened. Way back when. Up until recent years, I've had investment properties in Hull.
Brilliant.
So, I used to invest, and that was probably another thing for me, really, where my wife sort of came into that equation as well, and I bought a lot of properties. I bought, I think, 16 properties in the first 4 or 5 months coming out of corporate life. I did slam into that pretty quick, and many of those are up in the Hull area. I know a few people up there, family, relatives. But for me, that wasn't sustainable long term. I ended up in a cycle where I'd be getting up at 4 a.m. I'd be in Hull for 7, half 7 for a coffee, and what am I doing? Well, I'm missing my children's upbringing again.
Yeah.
So Sharon pulling me to one side, saying, "Look, you left corporate life to spend more time with us, and now you're disappearing all parts of the country." So I've learned to be very, very careful with my time. I know I can create an incredible amount of shared value out there, but I have to make sure it's a very much a one-to-many approach. I think you can be spread too thin in life, and you never get to the important things because you're dealing with the urgent things. So I tend to be very structured in how my working weeks are, and I know what best time I'm creative in the day or in the week, and when I need to turn my attention to more management meetings and board levels. So you learn a lot by stepping out there.
Definitely. I was going to ask you a question, which probably sounds crazy, but I bloody love structure. I'm doing a talk tomorrow on structure and sort of mapping your week out. And I know it'll be hard to answer, but what's your day-to-day now? What takes up most of your time? Is it strategy? Is it relaxing? Is it investment? Mentoring? What's it look like?
Well, each day starts with personal fitness. I spent many, many years doing Ironman events and ultramarathon running, but that simply wasn't sustainable. And I probably didn't focus on my nutrition well enough. So my training for an event, my weight would plummet, then it would go back up after the event, and you get this kind of seesaw effect of my health. When you run sort of 25 ultramarathon races around the world, it takes a toll on your Achilles. So now it's about gym, taking care of my nutrition. So I always start and finish the day with, gym or some kind of cardio. That bookends the day. I love
that. That is cool.
Yeah, it just creates that mindfulness. Like that. And my office is at the end of my garden. And I like to say goodbye to the girls when they go to school. The boys have got their own lives now. They've left doing degrees and working abroad and things. So once the girls have gone to school, I tend to go into transaction mode. I'm quite transactional in the morning, so management meetings, board meetings, dealing with maybe emails 2 or 3 days a week or 2 or 3 mornings a week. So it's that kind of activity in the morning, solving sticky problems, challenges, unblocking things. The afternoons I tend to be a lot more creative, so working on my own personal plans, my vision, strategy, looking at where we may be investing next in terms of that could be property or in business. I work a couple of mornings a week. I do a lot of work with investors, and I'm looking at writing another book as well, which will probably be my swan song. That'll be book number 7. So I need a bit of elbow room, a bit of time to create that, get the creative juices flowing a bit. And then
No wonder you
in
need
the
structure. You've got lots going on. That's why.
Yeah, and I like variety, Dan. I really do. It turns me on, to be honest. Doing the same old every single day would not be a good mix with me.
Do you think you'll ever stop? Not retire, but do you think you'll ever stop?
Well, I'm pleased you said it. I don't want to retire. I will slow down. I think what I've set in motion in investing in great talent is that talent is now doing amazing things. I believe we're in an output-based economy, not an input-based economy. And I really have never judged myself on my ability to put the hours in. I do work hard. I do what I love, so it doesn't feel like work. But I will always value somebody on what they achieve rather than the hours that they put in. So by laying the seeds now, those seeds are starting to have some lovely shoots and starting to blossom. We've got an amazing business, which I'm a shareholder in, which is a cost consultancy, a quantity surveying company. It's called the QS company. And Jake has done an amazing job growing that business. But we've got to a point where we've probably reached capacity. So it's what does the next growth strategy look like? And going back to my mergers and acquisitions background, we looked at that, we analysed it, and we're actually going to grow that through a franchise. So we're just about to franchise that nationwide.
Definitely stopping then.
Yeah, so definitely not stopping, but doing things gradually in a different way. I'm 55 this year. I don't think I'll ever stop supporting great talent, investing in that talent. I get a real kick out of that, and
It's crazy to think. You just mentioned you're turning 55 this year, when you could do that drawdown and take that 25% drawdown and have access. But then you think of what you've achieved since 2014 when you left to now. The thought behind that, if you didn't take action and make them decisions and life-changing decisions to better yourself and better your family, how different your life could be now. 10 years later in that corporate job and just taking that drawdown and leaving it. It's crazy to think on what you can achieve, and like people overestimate or underestimate what they could do, overestimate what they do in a year, underestimate what they can achieve in 10 years. And I think you're a fantastic example of the scale you can actually grow to within that period of time.
Yeah. I have made a lot of mistakes in my life, but in engineering, there's we call it root cause analysis, and staying rooted, staying humble. You'll never accuse me of standing still or procrastination. I won't always get it right, but I will make the decision. That's what leaders do. They make decisions, they go with it. If we have to change the battle plan, we'll change it, we'll tweak it. I'll base it on data, I'll base it on gut feel, I'll base it on my leadership teams out there. I just absolutely love that. The one thing for certain is change. There will always be change out there, change in society. So change in technologies, artificial intelligence, augmented reality. I've invested in an augmented reality company. I embrace change. I love change. I love to be the catalyst for that change, whether that be in property. We've created over 300 homes, 70 odd million GDV in commercial to residential conversions. It's just a great way of creating that shared value where everybody wins, and that the rising tide lifts all ships.
Perfect.
Amazing. Absolutely smashed the last 10 years. I love that. Well, your career, really. And I liked when you said earlier you fail in small doses. That really resonated with me. I like that.
I think I saw the other day with Stephen Bartlett saying success is just lots of combinations of small failures. Because not everything is going to go to plan. You have to take them learnings and them small failures on a whatever periodic basis in order to learn from and grow. So I think, if you hit a hurdle on X amount of days, pick yourself up, like I say, dust yourself off and get back and keep moving forward one step in front of the other, because you're going to learn something from that experience, which means that it won't happen again. And you can obviously pivot or use that, like I say, as a learning to grow.
Yeah, I think the word failure sometimes can be a misnomer. It's very, very rare in life that there's a catastrophic failure. I think, given my engineering mindset, if the lights go out on a data center, you've seriously had a bad day. That is not a good place to be. And that, I think that only ever happened once in my 25-year corporate career. It happened to a client of ours. But it's always looking at, did it run 100%? And I'm not a perfectionist. I don't believe in perfection. You'll never get there. You'll end up procrastinating, just sat there on the starting line with your wheels spinning. But what I do think you need to do is always reflect. Take time to reflect every day, every week, every month, every year, certainly at various stages during projects, so you can accept that it might have gone 97% well, but rather than celebrate the 97%, let's focus on the 3% and see how we can get those incremental improvements. The David Brailsford Team Sky 0.1% each day improvement. I have to say, I probably don't always get the balance right, with humility. I'm not a great celebrator. And I think some of our younger members of our team have actually shown me that actually we should be celebrating more the successes we have and celebrating the 97% rather than focusing on the 3% and how we can improve slightly. So there's a place for both of those approaches.
Fantastic. Mark, listen, I think it has been an absolute pleasure having you on. Wealth of experience within your corporate career, as well as from leaving your corporate role and into the world of SaaS and investments. And I really love the idea and your mission about creating shared value, because I think there's the way without getting political, the way the economy is and the increase in the wealth disparity at the moment. And I think that there's a lot of people who can achieve success, but at the same time not bring people down, bring them up and bring them with them. And I love what you're doing, and I think that's an absolute credit to yourself and your team around you in what you're aiming to achieve.
Thank you.
Perfect. So we do always finish on a question. So Heidi.
Yeah, so it's just a nice little shout out at the end. So we like to ask guests if they'd like to shout out a particular charity that's close to the heart. So do you have one?
Yeah, I do. We mentioned my book, Advice to Your Younger Self, earlier on. All the proceeds go to the British Heart Foundation. British Heart Foundation is close to me for a number of reasons. Going back right to the top of the podcast, you asked me where it all started, and I took you to when I left corporate life. And Nigel, Pete and I left corporate life at the same time. All had the same hopes and aspirations. Pete was as fit as a fiddle, and within a year of leaving corporate life at the age of 54, he was out with his cycling club in Spain, had a heart attack on his bike, dead before he hit the tarmac. And
Wow.
His 18-month-old daughter will never remember her father. Yeah.
That is tragic.
I'm
that.
sorry to hear that.
That's close to your heart, that definitely.
So,
thank you.
Yeah, it's incredibly sad. Look, somebody went to bed last night and didn't wake up this morning. You know, that's the reality of life. We have to play out full out. So whether you decide to do a static parachute jump or go free fall diving out of skydives, whether you do a 5K park run or go and run 260 kilometers across the desert, I'd like everybody to pledge to themselves, you know, every day is precious. Nobody's ever seen the next day ever. Play full out and just go and enjoy the company of people who accompany you on that journey.
Amazing. What a way to finish that. I love that. Thank you.
That's a perfect way to finish, Mark. And, you know, I think throughout the whole podcast, that's probably the best piece of advice that people listening to this will be able to take away. And I think it's so important. Go out there, live every day like it's your last, and go out there and achieve what you want to achieve. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Heidi. Thanks, Dan. Pleasure.
Unbelievable. Thank you for joining us this week. We hope we added value to your day. Stay tuned and see you next time for another unbelievable episode. See you next time.